Sumerians, Akkadians, Assyrians, Babylonians, and Persians. The subject of today's documentary. The ancient civilization. Look at that gold coin. Let's see if it's still on the screen. But oh, it's not on the screen no more. Put it around. I don't care. I'll rewind it. A couple seconds. My fucking back is killing me right now, yo. Damn, I gotta take something from my back. It's fucking me up. Oh, it's a plate. It's not a coin. Look at that. It's got a horse. I think he's got some shit in his hand or something. I don't know. Ah, fuck, dude. Yeah, I gotta fucking... Shit, fuck this. That can.
The civilizations of ancient Mesopotamia brought many important advances in the areas of science and technology, both through invention and inherited knowledge.
So
it would be almost impossible to get through a complete list, so we can only tackle the most significant, the most mysterious, and the most ingenious developments. Perhaps the most important obvious advance made by the Mesopotamians was the invention of writing by the Sumerians. With the invention of writing came the first recorded laws, called Hammurabi's Code, as well as the first major piece of literature, called the Epic Tale of Gilgamesh, which we addressed in our episode, The God Kings of Mesopotamia. It might seem obvious to state, but there would be no scientific endeavors without a way to write down the complexity of data. One huge body of data that features heavily in Sumeria is mathematics.
Fucking back. God damn.
The Mesopotamians used a number system with the base 60, just like we use base 10. They divided time up by 60s, including a 60-second minute and a 60-minute hour, which we still use today. They also divided up the circle into 360 degrees. They had a wide knowledge of mathematics, including addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, quadratic, and cubic equations. Incredibly, also ratio as fractions, trigonometry, and calculus. This was not just keeping track of records. This was to advance large building projects. The Mesopotamians had formulas for figuring out the circumference and area for different geometric shapes, like rectangles, circles, and triangles. Some evidence suggests that they even knew the Pythagorean theorem long before Pythagoras wrote it down. They may have even discovered the number for pi in figuring the circumference of a circle.
One of the most mysterious and enigmatic Sumerian clay tablets, nicknamed Plimpton 322, is finally giving up its secrets. The analysis of this palm-sized tablet by genius mathematician Daniel Mansfield of the University of New South Wales shows not just more advancement, but that it was also much more simpler too.
Right above my tailbone.
On mathematics.
The vertebrae
it will
right
tell
above
you
it.
that the ancient Greeks discovered trigonometry.
Man,
Our research into this Babylonian tablet is going to change all of that. Plimpton 322 is a 2,700-year-old fragment of clay from the old Babylonian period, and it's a scientific marvel of the ancient world. We've known for decades that its unusual sequence of numbers proves that the Babylonians knew the Pythagorean theorem 1,000 years before Pythagoras. But while there is agreement on what the tablet contains, there's been no agreement on what it was used for. Our research shows that it's a trigonometric table, so unfamiliar and advanced that in some respects it's superior even to modern trigonometry. We've discovered that these lines represent the ratios for a series of right-angled triangles, ranging from almost a square to almost a flat line. Babylonians' unique approach to arithmetic and geometry means that this is not only the world's oldest trigonometric table, it is also the only completely accurate trigonometric table on record.
need some some of that Ronnie. I gotta give me some of that Ronnie. Some of that Haroni.
The point is, their legacy of Sumerian science could not exist without using their advanced math. The Mesopotamian astronomers were able to follow the movements of the stars, planets, and the moon. One major achievement was the ability to predict the movements of several planets. This took logic, mathematics, and an advanced scientific process. By studying the phases of the moon, the Mesopotamians created the first calendar. It had 12 lunar months and was the predecessor for both the Jewish and Greek calendars.
Oh, yes. Still hurts, but I fucking cracked it, so
The Babylonians made several advances in medicine. They used logic and recorded medical history to be able to diagnose and treat illnesses with various creams, ointments, and pills. The caduceus symbol, known around the world today as a medical symbol, is a remnant of this era of Sumerian medicine, as the Sumerians seen medicine as a way of prolonging life. The quest for immortality is embedded in Sumerian mythology. Medicine was seen as a practical step toward it. The libation base of Gudea, with the dragon of Mushusu, dedicated to Ningishzida, 21st century BC short chronology. The caduceus is interpreted as depicting the god himself. In Sumerian mythology, he appears in Adappa's myth as one of the two guardians of Anu's celestial palace, alongside Dumuzi. He was sometimes depicted as a serpent with a human head. This amazing iconic symbol of the caduceus is the traditional symbol of Hermes and features two snakes winding around an often winged staff. It's often used as a symbol of medicine instead of the rod of Asclepius, especially in the United States. The two-snake caduceus design has ancient and consistent associations with trade, eloquence, negotiation, alchemy, and wisdom. Gudea of Lagash had a temple dedicated to princely ruler of Lagash in the 21st century BC, short chronology, was one of his devotees. In the Louvre, there's a famous green steatite vase carved for King Gudea of Lagash, dedicated by its inscription. To the god Ningishzida, his god Gudea, ruler of the prolongation of his life, has dedicated this.
Taken a moment to check out the Patreon page, please take just a few minutes. We really do need your help to keep this documentary series going. We are a viewer-supported production. You can get involved in so many different ways. There's an extra bonus material available to Patreons, and we have
like I'm gonna watch that.
The Mesopotamians made many technological advances. They were the first to use the potter's wheel to make better pottery. They used irrigation to get water to their crops. They used bronze metal and later iron metal to make strong tools and weapons, and used looms to weave cloth from wool. They utilized their science efficiently, essentially creating a technological industry for enhanced living. gates of Babylon were once considered one of the 7 ancient wonders. There were 2 massive walls that surrounded the entire city. Archaeologists estimate that the walls were over 50 miles long, with each wall being around 23 feet wide and 35 feet tall. There were also massive towers at intervals along the wall that may have been hundreds of feet tall. The Mesopotamians may have invented the simple machine called the Archimedes screw. This would have helped to raise water to the heights needed for the plants in the famous hanging gardens of Babylon. After the Assyrians conquered Babylon, they developed glasswork as well as glazes for pottery and art to help it last longer. We see the Assyrians immortalize the legacy of Sumerian science that was handed down through the Babylonian Empire. "18 different canals have been found that brought water to the Assyrian Empire capital of Nineveh. Whilst the kingdoms may have changed in Sumerian to Akkadian, then to Babylonian, followed by Assyrian, then finally by the Persians. Bloodlines, kings, and dynasties may have been in turmoil, but the technology, science, and engineering always grew, morphed, or became preserved in one form or another. Which brings us to an insanely interesting artifact found in the Assyrian Empire capital of Nineveh.
And before we discuss the Nimrod lens, one of the most bizarre high-tech artifacts to come out of the ancient world, let's just take a moment to reflect on where it came from. As due to recent events, the place does not exist anymore. The destruction of the city of Nimrod was in the following news clip, which may be distressing for some viewers, so please be advised.
One of the most magnificent archaeological sites in the world was here that an Assyrian king 3,000 years ago built his palace, and many of the statues and the frescoes from that time were preserved of the highest quality, but all of it destroyed in an act of wanton barbarity, the likes of which has rarely been seen in our time, or in any other time for that matter. Destruction of idolatrous images, filming themselves smashing some of the finest artwork left to us from antiquity.
Everywhere here, wreckage of prized artifacts of the ancient capital of the Assyrian Empire, a place mentioned in the Bible.
The Nimrod lens, Nineveh lens, or layered lens, whatever its origin, as ornament, as magnifying lens, or part of a telescope, the Nimrod lens is the oldest lens in the world. Looking at it evokes mystery and wonder. It can be seen in room 55 of the British Museum, in case 9 of the Lower Mesopotamian Gallery. One possibility is that it could have been an heirloom, hence the elusive context of this mysterious artifact. The layered Nineveh lens is said to be from the period 721 to 705 BC. However, this date is based on where it was found. The Nineveh lens is a 3,000-year-old piece of rock crystal unearthed in 1853 from the throne room of King Sargon II's Assyrian palace in Nimrud, in Nineveh, Iraq. Layard discovered the lens, which is considered the first used or found plano-convex lens. There is huge debate whether the lens is ground or polished. Rock crystal is the last substance you would want to shape into a lens due to its hardness on the Mohs scale. For this reason, academics state that this lens could have been only an ornamental. It is long argued it was part of a telescope or magnifying device because of the Babylonian legacy of astronomy, the most reasonable suggestion by far. Academics refute this as they say there's no context. It might seem bizarre that academia ignores artifacts that exist, that they can touch, examine, and test, because they don't like that there's nothing to go with it. That is unfortunately how it works sometimes. Of astronomical records on clay tablets stored in the British Museum, dating back to 747 BC, indicate they observed some of the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. Quoting the English Assyriologist George Rawlinson, there's said to be distinctive evidence that they observed the 4 satellites of Jupiter, and strong reason to believe that they were acquainted likewise with the 7 satellites of Saturn. A Camden professor of ancient history, he maintains, it has generally been assumed that they were wholly ignorant of the telescope. But if the satellites of Saturn are really mentioned, as it is thought that they are, upon some of the tablets, it will follow, strange as it may seem to us, that the Babylonians probably possessed optical instruments of the nature of telescopes, since it's impossible, even in the clear, vaporless sky of ancient Babylonia, to discern the faint moons of that distant planet without lenses. Simply speaking, there's huge context for this artifact, and it's largely ignored. As you'll see in the next episode, working rock crystal to intricate designs, primarily in cylinder seals, was born out of an ancient, high-tech school of engineering. It's not a question of whether this artifact exists. It's not even a question of what it was used for. It is, in fact, a lens. It's a question of context. Do we give the ancients in 700 BC the use of a lens as a telescope? That's essentially the bottom line which academia struggles with. Another perfect example of this is the 2,000-year-old Parthian battery, most likely an heirloom from a previous culture. Again, huge controversy and debate surrounds this artifact. The constant enigma is brought into play in the same style, whilst ignoring the fact that a 2,000-year-old sophisticated chemistry kit exists. The Parthians largely adopted the art, architecture, religious beliefs of previous cultures, just like the Assyrians. The Parthian rulers were titled the King of Kings, as it claimed to be the heirs of the Persian Achaemenid Empire. Indeed, they accepted many local kings as vassals, where Achaemenids would have had centrally appointed. The Parthian battery was discovered in 1936. While excavating ruins of a 2,000-year-old village near Baghdad, workers discovered a mysterious small vase. A 6-inch high pot of bright yellow clay, dating back 2 millennia, contained a cylinder of sheet copper 5 inches by 1.5 inches. The edge of the copper cylinder was soldered with a 60-40 lead-tin alloy comparable to today's solder. The bottom of the cylinder was capped with a crimped-in copper disc and sealed with bitumen or asphalt. A Another insulating layer of asphalt sealed the top and held in place an iron rod suspended into the center of the copper cylinder. The rod showed evidence of having been corroded with an acidic agent. These battery came to wider attention
All right,
in
niggas.
1938
Peace.
when Wilhelm